So now let me talk about specifically pricing in the cancer arena, because that's an area that really got me interested, and it got me very confused at first, because I didn't understand what the big deal was, given that cancer drugs are an incredible boon to patients. And so let's talk about a few examples. So one example occurred back in 2012 when Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the world's best cancer centers based in New York City, Memorial Sloan Kettering made the rather controversial and I think courageous decision to say no to a particular cancer drug. There's a drug called Zaltrap that was made available at the time. It was a new drug that hit the market that treated certain kinds of cancer, and Memorial Sloan Kettering said, no, we are not offering that to our patients. Why? Because it is probably more than twice as high as the current cancer drug, and it offers marginal benefits, maybe an extra month of survival. And they deemed it was not worth it. So they said no. And that was a very, very unusual act on the part of this hospital. But they just felt that it was unconscionable to be paying more than twice the price for a drug that does about the same as an existing drug. And there are many other examples of this where there are drugs that have gone off patent, but pharma companies have managed to make slight variations and have introduced marginal therapies, often called Me Too drugs, that because they are on patent are priced at 10 times the cost of these off-patent drugs. So Peter Bach, who's one of the co-authors at Memorial Sloan Kettering, a doctor who also has spent some time trying to understand the pricing situation, he wrote an article in 2009 that describes the fact that actually cancer drugs are not a free market. You think that they are, but it's highly regulated. And let me just describe to you a little bit about what he wrote in his paper in 2009. So one of the things that he pointed out was that Medicare, which is obviously an incredible consumer of healthcare products, that's one of the largest payers out there, Medicare has certain restrictions on what it can and cannot do with regard to cancer drugs. For example, for cancer drugs that are covered under Part B, which are drugs that are administered at a physician's office, so you can't, it's not a pill that you take at home, you've got to go to an office and get an IV drip or an injection. It turns out that the law requires Medicare to cover any drug used in anti-cancer chemotherapeutics regimen as long as its use is for a medically accepted indication. So let me translate that for you a little bit. As long as a doctor is willing to prescribe a cancer drug for you, Medicare has to pay for it regardless of the cost. So even if this drug has no material benefits above and beyond a leading generic drug, as long as a doctor is willing to prescribe this drug for you, Medicare has to pay for it. It has no right to say, no, we're not going to pay for this, you should take that drug for cancer. Now, we all know that that doesn't hold for other treatments, right? I mean, if you go to your doctor here at the MIT Medical and the doctor prescribes a statin, they'll typically give you a generic if it is available. If there's some reason that you're allergic to it, they'll change the treatment, but they'll give you the cheapest possible option. They can do that. They're not allowed to do that with cancer drugs by law. And he gives other examples where state by state, you've got restrictions on the ability to prevent cancer treatments from being reimbursed. And part of the reason for this is that legislators felt it was important for people that are facing life-threatening diseases to get the best possible care irrespective of price. They didn't want the so-called sleazy insurance companies to cheap out on you and give you the drug that's not really going to be effective. But of course, in doing so, it had the opposite effect now of giving incentives to pharma companies for developing Me Too drugs. As soon as one drug goes off patent, it makes sense to develop a comparable drug that doesn't do anything that much different from the previous drug, but it's on patent. So this situation is made pretty explicit in a table where Bach describes the limitations of Medicare for being able to negotiate pricing. And this basically says that formularies are really not allowed to negotiate when it comes to cancer drugs. They basically have to pay and stock any kind of a cancer drug that doctors are recommending. So this is the sense in which cancer drug markets are not free markets. They're actually regulated by law, and in this case regulated in a way that actually artificially boosts the price of the drug.